being held accountable for any mass murder they did. So that was all good and done. Then, as the years go by, mass murder didn't stop. You had Cambodia, Pol Pot. There was a mass murder there. The Khmer Rouge. Then you had Bosnia-Herzegovina in the 1990s. That came up. Then you had in the 1980s you had the DER in Ethiopia, which another mass murder. So mass murders were happening all the time, and not only were they happening, but they were outpacing judicial proceedings designed to address them. So for every, I gave the example of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, right? They just 2 years ago had hearings about that, and the Khmer Rouge happened in 1968. So that gives you an example how far the action outpaces the judicial, the judicial address to deal with these problems. So fast forward to the 1990s, and then you have Rwanda. Then after that, you have Sierra Leone, and you have Liberia, and the international community, particularly Africa, says that's it, that we've had enough. And these problems, these constant rebel strifes that hit people, that hit ordinary people, that indoctrinate people into war, they do nothing for Africa. They do nothing for development. And so they, we have to address them in some way. So when the Rome Statute came about for the International Criminal Court, a lot of African countries jumped on board. Or didn't exactly jump on board at that point in time, but they were very much interested. And you know, some of the big problems, of course, with Africa was machete money, that is, people getting paid to kill a lot of people. We had Sierra Leone's blood diamonds. Don't have to go into Rwanda. So we had a lot of examples. And then, of course, South Africa was very much interested also in the International Criminal Court because it went through the years of apartheid. And apartheid has been seen as against crimes against humanity. So the idea of a permanent International Criminal Court actually prevents, it's proactive instead of retroactive. I mentioned the courts before, the tribunals. They all are set up after a genocide is done. And so what sense does it make to set up a court to address the genocide when the action is already done? So it really doesn't make any sense. So that's why the International Criminal Court came about. A lot of countries like the idea of an International Criminal Court. The country that I'm from didn't like, it was part of the process, and then after 2001, it didn't really want to be on board. But the world is much broader than the United States. So the necessary amount of countries that were needed to have an International Criminal Court was ratified, was there, and the UN allowed these countries to ratify, even though the International Criminal Court is not part of the UN. But they allowed these countries to ratify it, and then they had enough countries on board to create this institution. So it is a court institution. Marcus, first slide. I want to show you a few people, and what I want to talk about today is one condition where the International Criminal Court would be helpful in supporting good governance in Africa. And this person is Joseph Kony, right? He is the leader of the so-called Lord Resistance Army. I used to think that was a really strange name back 10 years ago when I first heard it, because this guy is committing all these atrocities and he's calling himself the Lord Resistance. It's really weird. Okay, so Joseph Kony is a person I'd like to key in on, and he's from Uganda. And there's a reason why I want to key in on Uganda also. In the next slide, Marcus. All right, that's Joseph Kony again also. And if you look in his background, you see him with children. Next slide. Okay, this is the person's name, Thomas Lubanga. He's from the Congo. Almost like Joseph Kony, same thing. He's fighting a rebel war against the government of the Congo. And he did something that's really dangerous to development in Africa. It's almost the same as Joseph Kony. Okay, and then that's Thomas also, Thomas Lubanga. Next slide. And then this is Omar al-Bashir. He is the president of Sudan. And he was actually indicted by the International Criminal Court. So all these people, Joseph Kony, Thomas Lubanga, Omar al-Bashir, not so much al-Bashir, but they all have something in common. Now, what would you think could be the most devastating thing to any country in Africa, any country in the world, that these people could do when they're fighting a war? What do you think would be the most heinous thing they could do? With that? Yeah, go ahead.
Using child soldier.
Exactly, right. Okay, next slide, Marcus. That's very good. They all have something in common with this man, Charles Taylor. Right. And the condition of child soldiering really really can take away a lot of resources from your country. And it presents all kinds of problems, all kinds of social issues, all sorts of physical issues, but it strikes at the heart of ordinary Africans, because not only do these people fight wars with children, but they adopt children. And that is devastating. That's Thomas Lubanga, the person you saw before. That was one of the reasons why the ICC, he's there now, specifically because of child soldiering. The International Criminal Court recognized that child soldiering is a crime against humanity. Now, it gets even deeper than that. As I said before, the children are abducted. I remember when I was studying back at the University of Maryland, we had insight to kids in Uganda that were actually sleeping at night in the hills and the forests because they didn't want to sleep in the towns because they get abducted. So this is one of the reasons why Uganda was very, very much interested in the International Criminal Court. I don't know if you all know of a community in Uganda called Acholi. You know that? And then there's another community, I'm going to try to pronounce this right. Baronlia? Okay. Well, in those two towns, the Lord Resistance Army attacked those villages. And they killed something like 200 people in that area. In Acholi, they killed like 200 people. 300 children they killed in Baronlia. And they're very infamous now, well-known, documented attacks. And what they did when Joseph Kony came in, if you can go back to Joseph Kony, that'd be great. What they did was not only abduct kids, but they abducted girls, young women, and they used them as wives. Right? Now, so these are the things that happened. Now, the thing with the Baronlier attack was that the Lord's Resistance Army attacked them right in front, or right under the noses of the Ugandan Defense Force, the government defense force. They went right in there and did a lot of damage. And for Uganda and another country like Kenya, who had a problem with their election, there was a feeling that, not only can we not let this keep going, but we cannot stop it. We need international help. Joseph Kony cannot do what he does without some help somewhere in the government, Just a parody in the same problem with the country of Colombia, where you see they've had a lot of rebel activity, a lot of ethnic wars. Mass murder have occurred. A lot of people in the government themselves are part of these paramilitary groups. And they're part of these military groups, and they're part of the landowners, and they have their own forces, and they go out and do a lot of damage. So this is the same thing in Uganda. Uganda felt that there's just no way, there's something wrong, we can't do it by ourselves. So they became really interested in the International Criminal Court and actually not only ratified it, but harmonized its laws with the international law, with the Rome Statute, the protocol that governs the International Criminal Court. And when that occurred, sometime around 2003, 2004, Joseph Kony, there was big discussion in the bushes with Joseph Kony and his rebels about this International Criminal Court. They didn't understand what it is, but the rumors got so out of control. They were saying things like, wow, if you go to International Court, they're going to hang you. You're done with. And so it really made a difference in Uganda when it came about. What they didn't realize, though, the International Criminal Court doesn't have an arm of enforcement. It has to rely on member states to go out and do it. But still, the fact that it was there, it gave Uganda a platform to stand on. To say, now someone is watching you. There is a group now that's watching you. And in that sense,